Welcome to another episode of New Music Today here on the WePodcast Network. I'm Corey Robertson, and so happy to be joined by Tim King. Thanks so much for joining me, Tim.
Thanks for having me here
in the basement. And this episode, a wonderful conversation, and thanks as always to Charles and the whole staff at the Lesson Lounge in Leamington for their ongoing support of the show. And anytime you can support the show, you know you're supporting local. A lot of great shows here on the WePodcast Network. Tim, you've got such a great history with local music, and it's really kind of become quite a life.
Yeah, I've been fortunate that way. It started as a hobby, and I mean, it still is. Never consider myself that professional, really, although I've done it for pay for many years.
Right. How long have you made money off of music?
Oh, well, since the mid-'80s. Yeah. Within a year of learning to play guitar, we had, my friends and I from Leamington had entered a Battle of the Bands contest, and we won this contest. And then part of one of the prizes associated with it was a gig for, I think, the Wheatley Yacht Club or something, which paid great money. And
Sure.
we just wanted to play, Chuck Berry riffs and Neil Young songs. And
Yeah.
So it started, this, what do they call it? Baptism by fire.
Yeah. What do you think made you want to pick up a guitar for the first time?
Girls' reactions
Nice.
to
Of course.
rock and roll.
Yeah, of course.
Honestly,
Yeah, of course.
I transitioned from being a very avid motocross racer, and did that for a few years, and it's kind of why I walk funny today.
Yeah, sure.
But that was taken away from me. I lost my privileges. My dad and actually my brother had a guitar first, and he wasn't playing it, so I just picked it up, and I guess it was my mother who said, well, you didn't like the piano that much, but do you think you'd want to take lessons with us? So I said sure, and went to artistic music in Leamington at the time, and studied under Barry Rumble, who's I call coach. And he's still a good friend of mine.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, so started that way with the classic rock, and then it was probably 2 years later when I started to write, and I just found my own kind of riffs and that, and most songs were written around guitar riffs.
Yeah. I have always been fascinated with the songwriting process. And every time I talk to an artist, I get a different answer to the same question, and I love it. What is the process? Sometimes it's you got a little tune in your head and you can't get rid of it. Other times you think of, I don't know, maybe it is, where you think of like this cool, whether it's a lyric or there's this idea of where you want it to go.
Yeah.
Is there a process for you?
There is, and it is quite random at times. I mean, like I said, a lot of times it starts with a guitar riff, and that riff can come out of maybe a mistake of trying to play something else. And it's like, oh, that's not it, but that's sounding cool, And I would normally play with a drummer, always myself and a drummer. If there was no one else, that was enough kind of thing. So then I learned to write very rhythmically, and occasionally the lyrics would come together with the music, but normally not. Normally it would come through, sometimes I'd just be triggered by a memory and then, come up with a metaphor or it could be one word that I would hear or read in a book, and that would trigger a word game, a rhyming sequence, kind of thing. Cool. And always like to play around with that kind of thing, with word games and whatnot. So,
that's fun.
Yeah, the comedy side was always a big part of it. Always swore we're going to do a comedy album, And I've got some extremely funny friends who were like, "Yes, let's do that."
Right.
So, kind of
yeah.
so.
I mean, did you ever grow up with the who was it? The Dr. Demento kind of
that kind of stuff?
Like they were they weren't like Weird Al was parody songs, but there are
fun.
comedy songs like that have become classics.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Well, I would say Frank Zappa,
Exactly.
and early influence, and
Sure.
massive respect for the musicianship and songwriting, and that was top shelf stuff. But yeah, Weird Al, and then different radio stations would have their kind of jokey songs once in a while, and so we would end up doing things. During warm-up or sound check or whatever, and just change the lyrics to something. Something silly or disgusting or whatever.
Exactly.
It'd be just for fun to get a laugh, break the ice. And,
absolutely.
I think that stems from being like the class clown from school.
Sure.
I traveled a lot as a kid, changed schools a lot as a kid, so to keep me from getting beat up. As the new kid, I would try to make people laugh and be funny rather than
for sure.
Yeah.
But and music has led you to a lot of places and moving around and things. So you spent quite some time abroad.
Yeah, I've been fortunate that way. Again, my hobbies just taking me to new opportunities. But I've worked in almost 30 countries now, between music and photography.
You're right.
And spent a considerable amount of time in a Swiss ski resort called St. Moritz.
St. Moritz,
Yeah.
beautiful area.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Just anyone who goes there falls in love with it, and I did, and fell in love with my wife there, who I met in a club where I played music, and so that was great. And I again there, back to the tangent. I found my kind of people because they were all adrenaline junkies, kind of there, and like being a motorcycle racer, I was the freak, animal guy around here.
Yeah.
But there, I was just like another guy who just liked speed and brushing down these mountains. And it wasn't long before I met my drummer there, and he happened to have the big snowboard shop and school in town. And he had a teacher, and his head teacher taught me, and he is now the Olympic coach for Switzerland's snowboard team, and actually he won a gold medal in Sochi last time around.
Oh, that's incredibly cool.
Yeah.
So did you learn how to snowboard?
Oh
then?
yeah. Yeah, I was doing over 100 days a year of riding for a good 5 years that I was there, and big mountain riding, so the deep powder, the longboards.
Right. Yep.
And felt right at home, and those guys were like, "Aren't you afraid going this fast?" And with a camera bag on my back, I was like, "No, I'm good. Let's keep going."
Yeah, I grew up watching the Warren Miller movies, man. I want to strap like a camera to my head and just go skiing in the powder.
And I would see, he and his crew, and the European equivalent of him was Willy Bogner.
Oh, okay.
And I ended up, doing some behind the scenes photography for that, and riding a lot with the stars of his films.
Cool.
So it was an incredible time of my life, and very good for music and writing as well. We had an experience where MTV contacted us from Europe and asked if we would perform for this program they had called Snowball, MTV Snowball.
Sure. Yep.
And so we set up at like 9,000 feet above sea level outdoors.
Awesome.
Minus 10 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
With snowboarders flying over the drummer's head, doing tricks and whatnot. And guys like Marco and I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And, all that crew. And that was a lot of fun.
For sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned a couple of times now, so I just got to divert from music for a quick sec. Yeah. What did you ride? What was your bike?
I rode, I started off racing on a little Suzuki RM80.
Yeah.
And when those things came out, power to weight ratio, they were the most explosive little machines going, it went from trail bikes to these like really high end 2-stroke engines. And then my father, who was a champion dirt bike rider, before I was born even, had me on there when I was 5 years old on a trail bike. And then before you know it, we're getting custom parts and octane boosting additives to the fuel to go faster. And I was always a bit heavier, so I needed all the everything I could get to put me on par with a lot of the lighter jockeys were just faster because power to weight. So and then went on to a CR250 Honda, which was and still is like the most powerful, incredible machine I've ever ridden.
Cool.
But and I've had bikes most of my life since.
So you in living in Switzerland then for all this time, and really I think exploring what sounds like really three now pretty big passions for you, sort of a photography kind of a world, as well as music and certainly a little bit of a adrenaline junkie. What brings you back?
Okay, so we moved to Vancouver. I was the editor for the Canadian chapter of the North American Snowboarders Guide. And so these were considered the best in the world snowboard guidebooks. Yeah. So I'd worked in a few countries in Europe first, and we would go to all these different ski resorts and rate everything from the runs to the restaurants to the accommodation.
Yeah.
Accessibility for snowboarders, which was a challenge in the mid-'90s at times. There was a lot of skiers who were anti-snowboarder, and so that was right up my alley. It was like, oh yeah,
yeah.
Those were three different things. The photography actually didn't start until I was there, and there was a photo company that did all these events, all the sporting events, and how did that happen? I think one of the photographers, this girl got pregnant, had to go home, so there was this opening, and they were like, what do you know about photography? I'm like, I know what I like, and they'd show me, and they gave me pro gear and set me up at the St. Moritz bobsled course.
Okay.
So basically I had to take this one photo every time, and the bob course races would happen, and then they would take tourists down afterwards in the big 4-man bobs, and those people would buy photos from there. So that's how that started, and then, it just snowballed into every type of event, and especially World Cup snowboarding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you get back into the Windsor Essex County area, and sort of what I've just thought about here is that I think we're coming into our third year in Leamington, having done this Hogs for Hospice event.
I remember seeing you there. You were emceeing it there.
Yeah. So the first year event, and I know you did a lot of the photography and you did put together some cool stuff. And on the first year, we'd brought in Brett Michaels, of Poison fame, to be the headliner, and locally we had Jody Raffoul opening up, and I know you did a lot of sort of video work and some photography work. Yeah. And it's just kind of occurred to me that what a neat way to kind of blend for you. There's you've got the bikes, the music, and the art side of photography and video making, and it kind of brought it all back to the hometown.
Right, yeah, they're all interesting. And to finish my original thought, so I was living in Vancouver for 12 years, and then I got the news both my parents got sick at the same time. And so I'm the oldest child, so I came back to look after him. And my dad got cancer, and my mom Alzheimer's. So my dad didn't last long, and all of a sudden it was me and my mom at the Franklin Gardens nursing home in Leamington for a couple of years before she passed. So I was here and rekindled my old acquaintances, and talking to Jody one day, and he was like, "Hey man, what are you doing with those songs that we used to play back in the 80s that you wrote?" And I was like, "Oh, nothing really, my brother and I will jam them out once in a while." And then he starts singing out the lyrics. I'm like, I can't believe you remember the lyrics. He's like, "Oh, we got to do something with it, if you're going to be around here for a while." Yep. So I said, "Well, I've got very little equipment. I don't have a band, or big budget." He's like, "Dude, I've got the band." He goes, "Let me co-produce this thing." And
get ready. When do you hear the band?
And he says, "I'm going to introduce you to the Saints," which, as you know, are a great all-star lineup here and doing great work for charity. Every Christmas with the Christmas concert at Caesars.
And by the way, the last one that they just did raised $50,000.
Yeah.
That they literally like 3 months
for
ago.
Local food banks.
Local food banks and when you think
Fund.
about the people that were involved in that, for them to bring their time and their talent to make that kind of money, that's awesome.
It sure is, yeah. Yeah, so I got to meet all these guys, and Jody had me come out, and I shot some photos, and I put together my little collages and whatnot for them, and then we got talking, and so we went into Marty Back's place, SLR Studios, and started with the first songs that Jody and I first played together 32 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And started there, and then that quickly became an album's worth of material. And at this point, we're halfway through the second album's worth of material, bass tracking now. So, yeah, it's been a whirlwind and a lot of fun. I've been resurrecting old songs and writing new ones for this. So the style of the music is, really goes from heavy classic rock to a bit of soulful, funky kind of stuff, which I've always liked. Growing up here with the Motown influence, that was
for sure.
That was just fantastic.
Yep.
And who doesn't love that?
Yep.
And then there's a psychedelic side, several songs with exploratory open tunings with the strings and things that inspires certain. It inspires the way you write the song a lot of times when you're in these different different modes and different tunings and that. So, yeah, second album's going to have more of that stuff on it, but all featuring the incredible vocals of Jody,
Yep.
Raful, and Kelly Oche, who plays the
She's
keys
the piano player,
and
sure.
sings,
Yep.
and can sing whatever she wants.
Oh.
And I'll
She-
play her
she could do-
something
she
on
could probably
guitar,
do
and she'll
the-
play it back on keyboards
Right, and
properly the first time.
provide the 5-part harmony.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah. And of course, Jeff Burrows came in on drums, and I was like, oh, that made me nervous because he's the real deal. But he liked the songs, and he really put himself into it, and you can tell when you listen, like, boy, I can't believe he doesn't break more drums. He hits so hard,
Right. Yeah.
but with like cool groove and style, and that was crucial to make these songs.
Yeah, I've
come
talked
alive.
to Jeff. When we actually short period of time we actually worked together. Remember the stint when he was working in
DJ.
at our radio stations in Windsor. So we used to talk about that a lot. And the thing I always found about him as a drummer, what he brings to the songwriting process is he somehow on a percussion instrument kind of brings a melody.
Yeah.
There's a melodic feel to the way he drums. That's the way I have always viewed his work with Tea Party and a lot of his other projects. Certainly Crash Karma and some of the other things he's been involved in, Big Dirty and those sorts of things.
Yeah, absolutely he does. And he's got a very good, I think, sense of where to play dynamically depending on the lyrics and the groove. And he really knows how to fill the spaces he has to, the freedom in.
Yep.
And it really brings it alive.
Yeah. And tell me who else is playing on the record.
Okay, so Josh Zalev is doing all the bass. He's a local phenomenal
Absolutely.
musician, and he really gets the groove. My brother Darren King, he and I share the lead guitar duties and rhythm, whatever needs to be done. Kelly on keys.
Did you get some harmonica?
Let's see. Oh, of course, Mr. Chill on harmonica and
Mr.
saxophone.
Chill. Yeah, beautiful.
Phenomenal guy to work with, and his name says it all, Mr. Chill. He's easy to work with and open-minded, and he just brings such, a deep musical knowledge to it. And
so now you're in this room. And these are your songs. These are like your babies. You've had them for 32 years.
Exactly.
And,
a few of them, yeah.
Right? And it's like you're coaching the all-star team. It's almost become, after all these years, how do you coach Tom Brady?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But these are your songs, and you've sort of had this vision. So tell me about that, being in that room. And
I'll tell you, Corey, these guys need very little coaching. I mean, what they hear first is a click track or, a rough drum track in my rhythm guitar.
Right.
And sometimes a scratch vocal, sometimes not even that. And then they'll just play, in Chill's instance, a counter melody that really accentuates the main one, doesn't step on the main one, but is right there to perfectly present it, And that kind of thing. It's very difficult to work with non-professionals now, and a lot of times I would just go to jams
been
and
spoiled.
totally jaded and spoiled at this point. So, and it doesn't take that long really. And I mean, as far as coaching, maybe I'll say, okay, we'll listen to playbacks of a few different things, and then I'll just play something on guitar, like maybe these notes here, maybe that there, and bang, it's quick, and then he puts his own dynamic on it, or chooses. Like I say, a counter melody or something, and fantastic stuff. Yeah, I can't wait for everyone to hear it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Feast of Kings. When can people hear it? Well, it sounds like you're halfway through the second album.
Yeah.
In the recording process, do you sort of maybe have a timeline?
Yeah, well, we want to launch the band with a live performance and everything. We're looking at as soon as the Bank Theater in Leamington becomes available. After, so we're in talks at the moment about that. As far as the album being done and available for sale, we'll have singles probably at the end of February. Awesome. And the album's 85, 90% mixed, and just adding a few little things, like I've got a violinist also, Terry Paul. She's from the Fresno, California Philharmonic and does stuff with Disney and whatnot. Right. So I met her on one of my wife's business trips and got talking. She says, "Oh, I'd love to put stuff." I'm like, if I got an idea. And so, so for the first song, especially the song called "Your Happy Place," which I really wrote in the most unhappiest of places, where my mom was in that nursing home. I had a lot of time to think, so I wrote that there, and her violins and cello just really bring up the emotional kind of value to that in a kind of way where I'm much happier with it than without it. So,
Whether it's
yeah.
writing or playing or even listening, do you find music is a healer?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just the feeling of, and this is what's great about an acoustic instrument, like an acoustic guitar, or I do anyways, it kind of like hug it, and you feel those vibrations. So,
Awesome.
and a lot of times a melody for the lyrics or the vocal line will just come from like a moaning or, almost, a wailing or moaning or crying almost, humming, and then it'll develop, and then I'll get that rough idea, put some lyrics together, and then I would go to Jody with that and say, here's what I've got. And he's usually like, that's great. We don't have to change anything or change this word or that because it sings better, it flows better. But they're pretty much complete when I have the confidence enough to show somebody like that, who I respect.
Exactly.
immensely.
Yeah. I mean, that story just kind of reminds me of the John Paul relationship and that John and Paul had with each other. One of them would bring the song in complete, and the other one they'd either go, "Yep, we're done," and we're recording it, or it was a simple, John says we should change this one word, it'll sound better. Paul says let's do this or the other, and that was like that trust.
Oh, yeah.
As well as the collaboration, but it's almost like that musical trust.
Oh, that's definitely there. Has been since we were kids. First time I heard him was in my drummer's basement, and he pulled out his guitar and sang Rocky Raccoon. I remember the first time, and I was like, wow. Natural voice. It was there already when he was maybe 15 at that time.
Jeez.
Kind of thing. I was like, oh, yeah, he's the real deal.
Yeah.
And then we just always had that mutual respect. He always liked the way I played and wrote hooky riffs, and he was always very good at choruses and when to repeat, and when to kind of break the melodies. So I learned from him that way, and it's a very organic, very easy process. There's never like, no, that's not going to work. Really. It's always like, how can we make it work better, or how can it flow better, or how can we do? A lot of it is how we can remove things to have less, to unclutter the song, because a lot of times I'll overwrite, and there's extra words that don't really need to be there.
Sure.
Jody's very good at picking the ones that don't need to be, and then that frees up time and space to maybe accentuate one word, hold it longer, play a little bit on that one word or something. Very good at that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. What were your musical influences to get you to this? You talk about the certainly the songs you've already shared with me, and there's I love that you put it so there's a hooky feel that you put into your music, and that's what attracts me to music. When I get a hook, I just, I'm all over it. So, but you said, there's some funk and there's some old school psychedelic, but there's some classic rock. So what'd you grow up listening to? What were your musical influences?
Well, Led Zeppelin was kind of like the top of the heap for me. Still love them.
Sure.
There was that first album I bought was like Kiss Alive.
Beat me to the excellent. Kiss
Global
Alive.
Hop, yeah.
Good.
So,
Good
just good old heavy in your face guitar rock, with exciting lyrics and good melodies. Let me see. All the classic rock stuff. I really liked ZZ Top, that blues influence and that kind of stuff. So a lot of people say they can hear that influence in my style of guitar playing. I really like that.
Yep. What was the first concert you went to?
First concert was Alice Cooper.
Oh, come on.
Yeah,
Nice,
16
nice.
years old when the Joe Louis Arena first opened. It was one of the first shows. And the opening bands were Joe Perry from Aerosmith when he just broke away from his drunken stupor with Aerosmith. Let the music do the talking. And the opening band was a punk rock girl named Wendy O. Williams. And that blew my mind. She was topless with electric tape X's over her nippies. And her shtick was to smash television sets to bits with a sledgehammer while they were plugged in. So they exploded. And this is perfect for opening for Alice Cooper.
All right, sure, yeah.
So, I mean, that was a crazy
Being the
crazy
roadie
cool
on
first
that
show.
tour is a hell of a job.
Yeah. How are you with the broom?
How are you with the broom?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, it was my first big show.
All right.
Yeah, in Detroit.
I love to ask people this question: Is there like a secret obsession song that if you heard it come on the radio and you sort of if you're by yourself in the car and it comes on, you're like, yeah, I love this song, and I'm singing to it, and it might kind of make people go, what, really? Dude, you like that song? Is there like a secret obsession song for you that you're like, I don't care what anybody says, I like it?
There is kind of,
Yeah.
and I'll preface by saying the reason it is when I moved to Switzerland in '91 to go to work, a friend of mine made me a mixtape, and this song was on. I think I can't even remember the name. Is it Tears for Fears maybe? But it's that right here, right now, watching the world wake up from history.
That is Jesus Jones.
Jesus Jones.
Jesus Jones,
Thank you.
right here, right now.
Yeah, I haven't heard
Yep.
that in so long, but that's one of those songs that great groove, great lyrics,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
Bob Dylan didn't have this to sing about. He says, and
That's-
that always,
Yep.
yeah, and I mean it was kind of a poppy song, but I enjoyed it, and it had a
Absolutely.
fun guitar solo. In it.
It was a fun.
And
Yep.
I always tend to lean towards those ones that have fun,
Yeah,
heavier rock guitar solos in them. So.
absolutely.
Jesus Jones, thank you. The name slipped me. Yeah.
That's one of those fun games for me. Is
Yeah.
hey, Corey, you know that song that kind of goes, watching the world go by, you know,
Yeah.
whatever. You're like, well, you didn't give me much to go on here. Well, Corey, it kind of goes da 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 da. You
Name
know,
that tune.
What?
In 4 notes.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hang on, put you on. See, but nowadays I have I say to myself, oh, I'm just gonna Google the answer, and you you can't do that, right?
Yeah. It makes it easy for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Why reinvent the wheel?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that'd be one, and it was on a mixtape with other, early Soundgarden and
Yeah.
Alice in Chains and whatnot.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
that. So I'd be there shoveling snow to this, and it would make my day listening to that.
Yeah. There's some favorite places around the city, around the county that have just been historically like really good rooms to play for for a band.
Well, yeah, back in the day in Leamington before it burnt down, there was the Village Inn.
VI.
And a lot of great memories there. The old Seacliff Hotel down at the lake was always fun. The International Hotel, always fun. Hasn't changed. Same rusting farm implements.
It's actually not changed.
Yeah, are still there. They've moved the stage. But
That actually, so the IT for me, that there's a Toby Keith song, that country song, I love this bar, right? This is my bar. I
Yeah.
love that bar. Just I could walk in there. I don't ever want to see it change.
yeah, people from outside would call it a dive bar or whatever. But
Yep.
best cold OV in the county. And
There you go.
yeah, we'll actually be playing there St. Patty's Day.
Awesome.
Yeah, March 17th, is it? Saturday night.
Good stuff.
So, that. In Windsor, there used to be a place on Urin Church. It's gone now. The Sand Hill. There was Rum Runners, was always fun.
I loved that place when I was in school.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a fun place.
Rum Runners, good
Lion's Head,
place.
still there. Yeah.
Cool. So you got some gigs lined up then for Feast of Kings. We've got sort of on the horizon an album being done, launching, and this new build at Bank Theater in Leamington. By the way, if you haven't heard, this is going to be awesome. They're doing the folks at the Bank Theater are doing something really cool, and if you can participate, check them out. Find them all the normal places, Facebook and Instagram. They've got all that stuff there. And their fundraiser is this: if they can reach $400,000 in fundraising, the municipality of Leamington is going to match it dollar for dollar.
Yeah.
That's $800,000. We're building a theater in Leamington, Ontario, folks, and it's going to be cool. And I think that's great. You guys are going to try to smash the doors down on the first day.
Yeah. I really like the layout there. I've been to a few plays and whatnot there, musicals, and they've got the projection and the screen and that. So we'll probably have some, because I'm interested in multimedia and that. So we'll probably have some kind of psychedelia projected while the band plays and whatnot.
So I need to make the stage here a little bit bigger if we can get the full band in here. We can get the Feast of Kings in
We
here.
probably have to double the size, or split us up into two.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
You think we can?
We'll gladly play for you.
I love it. Tim King, thank you so much for coming in. I sure appreciate the time.
Thank you.
What a fun conversation. I love it as always. And I want to thank my friends at the Lesson Lounge. Thank you so much for your continued support. We sure do appreciate it. And thanks to Joe, as always. Appreciate your support producing the show, Joe. I want to encourage you to check out some of my colleagues here on the WePodcast Network. Up to 30 shows now here. This is something really special that we're doing locally. There's truly something for everybody. And one of the ones that you really might like is the local We Sports Talk Show. Fantastic stuff. And again, just really focusing on all things Windsor, Essex. That's going to do it for another edition of New Music Today on the We Podcast Network. I'm Corey Robertson.